I want to bring Jason up. This has been a great run here with Jason Beutler, who many of you guys know Jason. It's been a great pleasure for me to get to know Jason. I think I met Jason back when we were over in the basement of the library and working a little bit. And so it's been a good run here with Jason and his team developing, now moving down this path. We had a meeting yesterday here and an introduction. We've got a big meeting, a big event coming up. I'm not going to take any of that story because I want you to share that. But when we have, and I'll end with this, when we have an opportunity, and I see some of his team here, why Launch Fishers was started and thinking about, fostering development for entrepreneurs and technology. And then we get to bring that together and have events like this, and then do an event in the city of Fishers. I got to steal a little bit of your thunder here, and have 200 people show up and have a well-known person show up and speak. And we get to do that over at City Hall. And not only other entrepreneurs be there, but people from around the city and the state come in. That puts us all on a map that is incredible. And it just causes people like you to want to come in, causes people from around the state to want to come in and say, what's going on? And especially this topic where we can point out that he is a leader, that our team, me and that Rachel and Ashley want to join in and follow along and be a user of their product. We want to get smarter in AI. We want to use it, and it teaches us, and we get to be like, hey, I want to be an advocate for them. I want to learn about this. So that's what's awesome about this. That's why we have him up here speaking today. I know this is going to be a great session. I'm happy that you guys are all here. So I want to welcome to the stage. I'm going to jump off because I'm not the expert in the room, and Jason is. So Jason, welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks so much. Well, thanks again for having me here. This is going to be really fun, I hope. I hope I don't bore you all. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about AI for executives. And so here's what I believe about AI. So here's kind of my goal. I want to talk about why we care. Let's make sure that we understand why this matters. I think we all get AIs here, and that it's a little intimidating. But why do we actually care from a business standpoint? Let's talk about that. I think we want to talk a little bit about how it works. Now, here's my disclaimer to that. I'm a geek. I'm proud to be a geek. I love getting into the weeds. But I think from an executive standpoint, what we need to be able to understand is what's really going on so that we can make a good decision about how to use it. So if we understand, we don't need to know all the math. We're not going to get into calculus. But if you understand conceptually what's going on here, you then can start to apply it in a more effective way when you're making decisions and learning about how, and figuring out how you can roll this out into your business. So we're going to talk about how it works. In that section, stop me if I'm getting way too geeky. Then we'll jump into how you can leverage it. This is going to look a little bit like prompt engineering or prompt training, if you've heard that term before. We're going to talk about how this works, but we're going to do that in light of what we just understood about how AI works and why we're doing what we're doing in our prompts to help make them more effective. Last is I'm going to talk about next strategic steps, and we'll talk a little bit about that more when we get there. So, all right, ready to jump in? All right, so let's jump into why all the hype. So let's start with, everyone's used AI, right? At this point, I just make that assumption. And you go in and you can ask it to do something. You can say, write me a haiku about puppies, and ask for a little puppy poetry, and it will do so. And it actually does a really good job. You get a really good outcome, and that's cool. But again, why do we care? Why is that important? What just happened here that actually made businesses go, whoa, the world's about to change? And so let's break it down. The first thing that happened is a haiku is English that describes a complex set of rules. Now, they're relatively simple for us, right? You're going to have 3 lines. You have to have a number of syllables. But think about, how does a computer do syllables? Like, that's hard. So that's a kind of hard problem. And we were able, and what this AI did is it was able to take this word, haiku, and translate it into, here's a set of rules that need to be applied in order to meet the goal of what that person is asking us to do. So that's the first thing that's kind of interesting. We're leveraging a word and tying it to a series of rules. The next part that gets interesting is it did goal seeking. We told it the goal we wanted. We said, I want you to apply these set of rules to this outcome, to this goal, to a puppy. And it was able to say, oh, how can I use these rules, live within that constraint, create a plan on how to get there, and then actually execute that and hit the target. Like, that's kind of cool. And a computer did that. That wasn't a human. That was a computer that pulled that off. So even though this is a real simple example, it shows you the technology and where technology is heading. So, all right, in this case, we said, all right, write a haiku about puppies, right? Apply these set of rules to this outcome. But what if we said, underwrite this mortgage? How far off is that, right? It's kind of doing the same thing. Here's what underwrite means. There's a set of rules, there's a set of principles, there's a set of ideas we need to apply, and then here's the data to define what that mortgage is. Let's apply those two things. Let me goal seek and figure it out for you. That's where business starts to go, oh, wait a minute. The world might be different now. So that's why we care. That's why this is important. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's talk about where this all fits. Make sure we get in the obligatory, this is math and technology conversation. So we start with artificial intelligence. This has been around since like the beginning of computers. Everyone's been talking about it. It's not like, we've been talking about it since the 50s and 60s. Like, this is not a new thing. Everyone kind of dreamed of this, right? We've all read sci-fi that talks about it. Like, this is something that human beings have been imagining for a while, and we've actually been researching for a very long time. That's nothing new. What has started to come around is, in the late 90s, early 2000s, machine learning started to become a thing, and you started to be able to use data to kind of make predictions in a more effective way. We all live with this within Amazon, right? People who bought this also bought that. That's machine learning. It's figuring out, it's using data, it's applying it. We all see it, and we're even kind of comfortable with it. Matter of fact, we kind of expect it in a lot of our tools these days. Then we started getting into what starts to be a little more sci-fi, which is this deep learning idea. This is neural networks. This is multiple layers of pattern matching. But I do want to come back to one same thing. It's all coming off of the same idea. It's all coming off of math. It's all coming off of prediction. It's all coming off of this idea of, can I find patterns and highlight those patterns for you? And that's really what's going on here. We then ended up with something called generative AI. This is what started to get all of the excitement, and everyone was like, whoa, you can make a movie by just typing a paragraph? And it started to be kind of real. Then you end up with what's called large language models. That's a lot of what you're seeing now in the OpenAI, the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, the Anthropic Claudes, the Google Gemini, XAI's Grok. There's like hundreds of them these days. Probably way more than you even realize are out there. So large language models are all built on the same principles that have been worked on going back to the 50s, 1950s. And so it's really nothing new, but it's also completely different. Because we hit a tipping point where the math was able to do predictions that now felt like it was intelligent in a way that we had never really experienced before. And so that opened the eyes of business. That's why executives care now. Okay, however, it's not magic. It is just math. So we want to talk about how this works. This is where we're going to get a little geeky. So stop me if I go too deep. Ask questions, please. We're going to kind of glaze over some things, but I want you just to understand what's going on. So there's a concept called embeddings. You might have heard it. And really, the reason why this is important is because it helps you understand how the AI is able to reference and remember things and pull it in. And that's why I want to bring it up, okay? So what happens is for every word in this sentence, it goes through and it creates relationships from all the words on the left and all the words on the right. And in those relationships, we're going to just hand wave over the fact that it comes up with numbers. You'll hear this referred to by the AI scientists as weightings, and it's basically the way that all of these words relate to one another, okay? So it comes up with all the numbers on the left, and it comes up with all the numbers on the right, and it puts those together in a great big long set of numbers. We call that number a vector. Okay? In AI, have you heard the concept of embeddings and vectorization? You probably heard those terms start to come up. That's what they're talking about, is basically we embedded mathematical numbers around how all the words relate to each other, and we have a new thing called a vector, and that's our new model. All right, why does that matter? That's as mathy as I'm gonna get. Are we cool? Okay, so didn't lose anyone? All right. Okay, why does this matter? Well, let's start with the idea of let's start to train a model here. We're going to do this very simplistically, but you'll start to see why it matters. All right, lasagna is Italian food. We take that sentence. We run it through our embedding algorithm. We look at all the words on the left, we look at all the words on the right, we turn it into a big long string, we get a vector out of it, and bam, we now created a vector. We drop this vector, remember physics class in high school, right? So we got our vectors on our two-dimensional graph. For the scientists and computer people in the room, I am way simplifying this. I am very aware it is not a two-dimensional array. It is billions of dimensions, but to simplify the way we think about it, we're going to think about it in 2 dimensions. So lasagna is Italian food. Embed it. Turn it into a bunch of numbers. Take that number. We put it we plot it on a graph, essentially. We now have a vector. All right, awesome. We come along. Ravioli is Italian food too. What do we do with that? Well, we do the same thing. Take the words, convert it in, run it through embeddings, convert it to a vector, drop it into our database. All right, we now have another vector. We then come along and we say, Super Mario is Italian. It's kind of the same, right? But it's not. Like, we know semantically and we know as humans that it's not the same thing. But it was the same words. Like, we defined something as being Italian. So it does the same thing. It goes through embeddings, it goes through vectors. But notice that the vector it created was a little bit different. Now it has an intersection point. That intersection point is probably the word Italian. So they intersected with the others, but it's a little bit different, and we know that. And so our math needs to represent that. So that's what our math did. It represented a little bit. So you come along then and you write a prompt. You go into ChatGPT, you open it up and you say, I want Italian recipes. What does it do? It does the same thing. Go through embeddings, create the vector, drop it into our database, but in this sense, we're not saving it, we're using it to do a lookup. So we go find all of the vectors that are close to what we just said, what we just asked for. I want Italian recipes, and it goes and says, oh, well, what are all the things that are kind of close to this? For the math geeks, they're using cosine similarity on that. So go find all the stuff that's close to this, bring that in, and that's now my center of reference that I'm going to look for patterns in to answer your question. So does that make sense how we got there? All right, so this is what I want to make sure we understand from an executive standpoint. You don't really need to understand all the math, but you need to understand that when we ask it, when we give it a word, when we give it sentences, when we give it unstructured data, things from emails, from Word documents, from PDFs, from videos, it takes all of that and it turns it into these vectors that align with the prompt that you're giving it. So when you are prompting it, it can use that to go find the information that's important to what it is you're actually asking. So that's how we're able to find things, that's how AI is able to recall and remember things that you're like, how in the world did it know that? It's also why, if your prompt isn't right, all of a sudden it'll bring in things you're like, why in the world did it say that, right? Because it's finding things that are kind of close to what matters and moving that in. We tracking? Okay, so then we get into, in our large language model, we have something, have you ever heard the term context? Yeah? Okay, so they talk about a new model comes out and it has a certain amount size of context. Well, what is that? Why do we care about it? Think of a context as like your desk, or the table in front of you. There's only so much information you can put on it before it starts falling off the edges. So if you were to come in and say, I want Italian recipes, it's going to go out to your database, it's going to find all the vectors that line up with it, it's going to pull it in on your desk, that's now working memory. It's now sitting there, and then it goes, oh, through other magic that we're just going to hand wave over, it does prediction, and it says, hey, here's your outputs, here's all the stuff that makes sense, here's the things that I think you would want to know about Italian food. And that's awesome, and it all fit in your context. And then you come along and you say, ooh, but I was actually thinking more about traditional Tuscan recipes. We gave it a different vector for it to go look up. So it now goes out. Well, notice what just happened to the stuff up top. It fell off your desk. So you ever had a moment when you're working with AI and it starts asking you a question where you're like, I already told you. Like I already gave you this information. Why are you asking me again? That's what's happening. Okay? So when people talk about repeating or summarizing that information and bring it forward, what they're doing is they're basically trying to take all the stuff that's about to maybe fall off of your desk and put it back into a place where it can remember and do something with it. Make sense? Now, now that this is again a simple example. These contexts are getting really big. And by really big, I mean like can hold entire books. And some instances could maybe even hold like the entire Harry Potter series. So like they're getting really, really, really big. And the bigger they get, the smarter AI is going to get. Because think about if you were making decisions as an executive and you were only allowed to use the last week's worth of knowledge that you gained. You're going to have the decisions you make are going to look a little different than if you could rely on decisions that happened years and years ago. So when we talk about context size, that's what is really essentially what makes the AI intelligent, because it's what gives it the breadth of knowledge that it can pull in to actually make good decisions for you. So Gemini right now, I think, they change so fast, I can't keep up with them. I think Gemini is currently the largest context that's out there, and that's why when working with files, you'll see that Gemini is better than all the others, because it has a bigger space to work with. It has a larger desk, is really what it boils down to. Make sense? Yeah.
So there are Gemini models that have 1 million tokens of context.
Yep.
My understanding, that means I could query it with 750,000 words. Not that relates to how much it remembers in the string of that conversation if I ask it another 750,000 words.
It is the same. So those 750,000 words get turned into those vectors, and it's pulling that reference of that vectors in, and that's all in that same context, and that's how it will make the decision. Because essentially it's pulling all of that in. So if you give it 1 million tokens worth of context, that's all it has to work with. Yep. All right, we understand the basics of how everything's working? Okay, let's now talk about how to apply it. So, what I want to talk about here is most people approach AI as a search engine. And as you can tell, search is a good function. Like it's really good at searching. And so we can come in and say things like, hey, I'm looking for the best trails in Yosemite, like you would to Google. And Google will go out, create its keywords. It will go out to its vast database of links, and it will send back a page that shows you all of the best trails on Yosemite, and you can pull them all up. And so a lot of people will use like ChatGPT or AI the same way. They'll say, hey, what are the best trails in Yosemite, right? Everyone treat it like a search engine for the most part. Like yeah. So, and it can do that, but that's kind of like saying that a wide receiver on a football team is a sprinter. Like, yes, they sprint, but their job is to do something different. Like their job is to get open, make routes, catch the ball when it's thrown to them. Like it's more than sprinting. So let's talk about what is actually going on, or how we actually want to use AI. Like how do we use it as an intelligent advisor to our business and to our process? So 4 things to remember. First, we want to assign it a persona. You might have heard this tip before. I want to explain why it works, okay? So you can come in and say, act as a professional trail guide. What trails are best for, what are the best trails in Yosemite? Okay, a little more advanced than what you would just put in Google, where you say what trails are best in Yosemite. You now get a little more advanced. You say, act as a professional trail guide. Why does that matter? What did that just do? We just created a vector that said, I want you to go find all the professional trail guide information, and I want you to find all the stuff that's kind of related to that and bring it into your memory. And then I want you to go out and find all the stuff that's about best trails for Yosemite and bring it into your memory. And I want you to find the patterns that overlap and answer it. So you see how I gave it an anchor? So I just said, I want you to pull information that thinks a certain way, and I want you to pull that in along with other information around the trails that we want to do. So you're giving it context for it to be able to make a better prediction about what it is you actually want to see. So when you do that, you get a certain output. And it's a decent one. It's a little small to read. You don't really need the details. I just wanted you to see that it will do it. And it said Mist Trail to Nevada Falls. I don't even know how to say that. Pajano Trail, Glacier Point. Like it gives you a breakdown and gives you some hidden treasures. That's a little bit better than just what are trails in Yosemite and getting a list of pages to go to. Okay, but let's go farther. Let's do the next thing. Now let's give it some context. So act as a professional trail guide. Hey, we're from Indiana. We only have 2 days to spend in Yosemite, and we want to see the highlights the National Park has to offer. What are some best trails? Okay, I'm building on the same thing, but I gave it more context. What did I do? I gave it more vectors to play with. And what did those vectors do? They help limit the knowledge to be the kind of information that would actually be important to answer my question in the way that I actually want it answered. So by doing that, all of a sudden what you're going to see come out of this, you'll see, oh, here's a 2-day breakdown. It broke it down a little more effectively for me. And then at the bottom, notice practical considerations for Midwest visitors. The first thing it says, hydration is crucial at higher elevations. It identified that I'm probably not going to do well in high elevation. And it started to give me strategies around that. And that only happened because I gave it additional information. I gave it additional context. I basically said, here's some additional vectors for you to pull in to find your answer so that you can be more effective in the way you're dealing with it. Does that make sense? All right, now let's give it some limits. I'm gonna take my dad with me, and I'm kind of lying. He's not in decent shape, but he's in decent shape, and he will be joining us, and he's in his 70s. It's like, all right, my dad's gonna come along. Well, what did that just do? So again, I'm giving it more context. I'm giving it more vectors to choose from in the way that it answers the question so that it can infer the intent that I want. Because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence wants to make you happy. Like, its whole entire goal is to make you right. So when you don't give it enough information, it assumes what it can assume to make you happy, which is why you get things like hallucinations, because it's trying to figure out how to make you happy. So the more context you give it, the more it's able to actually look and piece through all of those individual pieces of data to make you happy. So in this case, it breaks down and it gets like really in depth. And I mean, it goes into a whole bunch of stuff about what I should and shouldn't do. And notice the trail hikes went from, if you could see it, the trail hikes went from like 7-8 hours down to like 1-hour trails. So it started to really refine the way that I was working. My last, this is one of my favorites. Ask it to interview you, because you've told it the persona, you're a professional trail guide. And you've given it some context around who you are, and then you say, hey, interview me one question at a time. It's gonna pull in the kinds of questions that a trail guide, professional trail guide would ask, and it's gonna start asking you those questions. So when that happens, and I'll send this out so you can all read it if you want, it goes through and is like, you know, how long are you gonna be there? What are the ages of your children? It starts asking a bunch of questions and literally ends up breaking it down into places where I can drop my dad off so that he can wait while we go do a hike. Like, it starts getting like very detailed. So we basically did the same thing. We used it as a quote unquote search engine, but by following these 4 principles, you start to actually give it more context. You allow it to pull in more information so that it can really answer your question. So we understand the structure of how that's happening and what's going on there. Any questions around that? Okay.
Based on that, is there a way to change the reward function in a custom GPT so that it's not being so sycophantic, but it's actually getting an answer you're looking for?
Yes, let's talk offline. So, yes, because you've hit on a bunch of stuff there. So, but yes. All right, so by doing all that, we now can start to give it some understanding about the way we want it to answer questions. So now that we understand, okay, how does it work? What's all the math look like? What are the vectors? What's the embeddings? How does that function and why do we care? Okay, we understand that. Now, how do we talk to it so that it knows how to leverage, so that we understand how to use those vectors to pull the right information in at the right time so that we can actually get information that's answering our question appropriately. Okay, we now understand that. Next, how do we start using this in business? Well, you're all probably aware, but you can leverage files. So you can upload files. So this is an example of me basically putting a prompt, a pretty quick prompt, and I am uploading a sales document. Basically, it's a sales report. This file is very simplistic. It's literally just lists of numbers, months, and dates, and people. And so I upload it, and I tell it to go. And so you'll see that it goes through all this thing. Now, what's going on behind the scenes here is it's going to start uploading that file. I gave it some context to say, you're a professional sales coach. I want you to help me think through the sales function here. So it knew what to pull in to answer, to build the kind of question it needed. And then it goes out and it actually starts building. It's going to be a little intimidating. It starts writing code, right? Like, crazy that AI can do that. But it starts writing a bunch of code on my behalf to analyze this file in a way that I can now make informed decisions from. And so here in about a second, after it's done analyzing this, now I didn't do anything fancy other than say, this is who you are and this is what I want you to do when you come out. It generated a bunch of reports, it generated a view for me, and it started to break down how this worked, how this was working, including highlighting information for me along the side. Now, I didn't do any of that. Like, this isn't something I sat down and trained it on how to do. I literally found something off the internet and drug it up there with a prompt using the same 4 principles I used before. So you can do this with anything. And as long as you can anchor it with the right vectors and say, this is the way I want you to think. I want you to think like a sales coach. I want you to think like an HR professional. I want you to think like a software developer. Look at this information that I'm giving you. In light of that, what would you say? And it will give you very detailed information because it has access to patterns that our brains can't. Because we just can't remember all this stuff. And that's the real power behind what's going on with AI, is through the vectors, it can remember things that there's no way we would pull up on a regular basis. Does that make sense? We see that? This is one of my other favorite ones. You're about to go into a board meeting. You know you got a board member that's like a little curmudgeony, maybe a little bit cheapskate, and is gonna really dig in on all the numbers that seem to be out of whack. Literally say, that's what I said here, act as a skeptical board member with 20+ years of experience and a strong finance background. Take the same file, the sales, and tell me what would you pick at? What would you nitpick on in my conversation as I go into this board? And you will get a very detailed set of questions that board member will ask you. Interesting side note, I recently had the opportunity to sell a really large $1 billion retail organization. So we're driving over there. I don't normally deal with $1 billion companies, just being transparent on that. Like $1 billion companies are a little bit above what I normally am interacting with. So I'm thinking, wow, this is gonna be a new experience for me. So as we're going over, we started asking Claude, this was the one that we were using, what would a $1 billion company be wanting to talk to an AI company about? And it's like, what's going on here? Just asking it some questions. So we gave it a prompt and kind of told it what I knew about the CEO that I was going to talk to and had it spit out. It spit out 3 things. It said you're going to want to look at shrinkage or loss. You're probably going to look at inventory management and I can't remember, customer reward retention policies. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. It was not 3 minutes into the conversation with them that all 3 of those things came up. Like it hit them all. So it does a really, really good job. Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. So, I don't think so, because my interaction with him, I don't think he knew that AI was a thing. But anyways, it does a really good job. So yeah. So the general AIs are all going to be very good at being very generic in general. that's their point. So open AIs or Chat, Claude, Gemini, X, they're all really trained. So a lot of it comes down to your embeddings. What are those embeddings actually weighted and how do they work? So they're all kind of trained in a more generic fashion to answer most generic questions. If you're really getting into a specific scenario, say like medical, I wouldn't use one of the public ones. There are models that actually allow you to train the way that it reads the words a little bit differently, so that especially with medical, it actually can understand the difference between all the little terminologies that matter there. So yes, you should use a more specific model when you're getting into a more specific scenario. All of the models that are out there right now are pretty general, though they all kind of lean one way or another. Claude is a little bit better at writing human readable text. It tends to be trained a little more on the nuance of language. OpenAI is a little better at logic. X seems to be, XAI or Grok, Twitter, whatever he calls it now, is probably the best general overall one. Gemini does better with large context files, like large stuff. But you're not really gonna know, like I'm gonna know because I'm like in the little weeds of it all, but most people aren't gonna really see a difference. So, One of my favorite statements is, as an executive, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the box. And what I love artificial intelligence for is it allows you to get outside of the box. So use it that way. It's an advisor. That's what it's designed for. Don't, like, yes, there's all this marketing hype around how it's going to automate jobs and it's going to do all this, and it will, in forever, like 3 months from now. So it will get there. But in the meantime, what it's really good at is be as an advisor. It's designed to help you think. So use it that way. So use it where you can say, hey, this is what I believe to be true. Tell me all the reasons why it won't be. Now you're thinking, now it's literally questioning you in a way that no one on your team's going to do, because there's political consequences for that. Most people that are in your business aren't going to be able to, because they don't understand the complexity of the things you're dealing with. And it also is a little bit hard sometimes to ask those questions to the whole team when you yourself are dealing with some uncertainty and trying to figure out how to manage it all. This allows you to work through all of that. And it will go back and forth with you and will help you get clarity around what it is you really need to do. So then when you come to your team, you can come to your team a little more informed, and their input can be more impactful in shaping the way that you're actually moving forward with your strategy. It is not designed right now to replace your decision making. It's designed to augment it. And so it's designed to be that intelligent advisor that comes alongside of you and just helps you think different, helps you think more broader than what you would be capable of doing on your own. It can get outside of your own experiences because it literally is referencing the entire internet, which is also the downside of it. So, because it's referencing the entire internet, which is why we want to be real specific around the vectors and the information that we pull in. Cool? All right. I'm going to do some uber geeky things. Do I still have time? Okay. All right. Uber geeky things. So we're going to get in a little more into how the prompting works. I'm going to give you two kind of more like in the weeds structures on how to do this. So the first one is what's called few shot training. So AI looks for patterns and it tries to replicate those patterns. So one of the things you can do is you can actually give the patterns in your prompt. So the example here is, hey, I want you to extract a bunch of keywords from this text below. Here's an example, a bunch of text that I copied off the internet, and here are the keywords that I think you should pull out from there. Here's another example, text number 2, a bunch of text I pulled off the internet, and here's the keywords I think you should pull out of that. Now I'm going to give you a third set of text, and I want you to tell me the keywords. And because you've given it the patterns to the examples, it now has a pattern to replicate, and it will use that pattern to answer your question. So that's really cool because you now have the capability to actually tweak the prompt to respond the way that you would expect it to. And so where does this come in handy? What if you were writing an email and you were like, here's an example of one email that I wrote around this difficult conversation. Here's an example of another email I wrote around this difficult conversation. All right, I'm about to have another conversation that's kind of difficult. How would you write that in a way that sounds like me? You just gave it two examples that it now can use those as patterns to answer your question and to basically write the email for you in a more specific way. So you can use this few shot training when you're wanting it to mimic something very accurately, or when you're wanting to say something along the lines of like, I want you to think a certain way about certain problems. You can say, here's the way I think about it. Here's the example. Here's my output. Here's another example. Here's my output. Now, if I, again, just like you would with a kindergartner, if I show you A and you give me B, and I show you C and you give me D, what happens if I show you E? It's like the computer will go, I'll give you F. It understands that. And so it's a really handy little trick that you can use to get your prompt to do a little more specific thing that you want it to do when you're talking to it. Good example, put in the executive or the board member. I have a curmudgeony board member that's going to ask me a bunch of questions. Here was a question I asked before, or here was something that he asked before, and here was something else that he asked before, and here was another thing that he asked before. Given that you've seen this trend, what do you think he's going to ask me next? And it'll be pretty accurate because it sees those trends and will start to kind of dig into the way that they're communicating. This one's a little more geeky. It's a lot more geeky. I like this one. This one's fun. So what this one is doing is basically, AI does best when you actually break the problem into smaller pieces. So one of the strategies is what we call chain of thought reasoning, where we actually tell it step by step how we want it to do. This is an actual example. On the left, I said, Roger has 5 tennis balls. I gave it a whole example, and I said, here's what the answer should be, 11. Then I gave it a question with some math on it. The cafeteria had 23 apples. If they used 20 and bought 6 more, how many apples do they have? And it said 27, which is completely wrong. Nowhere near even the right answer. How'd it get there? Well, no one really knows. When you look at the math, it just does weird stuff behind the scenes. Don't use generative AI for math. It's terrible at it. So it's just horrid at it. So what you can do, though, is you can say, in this example, the right example above, here's Roger. Here's how I went about getting an answer. This is the chain of thought. I want you to think the way I think. I want you to first do this, and then I want you to do this, and then I want you to do the third step. And you tell it that in an example. Then when you give it the same question below, it gives you the reasons and it got the right answer. Because you told it how to think. You told it, I want you to follow this pattern in your thought, in your thinking. And so it broke it down so that it actually operated that way. Does that make sense? Like, that's pretty cool. So you have control over how this thing works. And you have control because you have vectors. And those vectors allow you to tell it what to bring in to make your prompts more effective. And so by using words, we now have the capability to change the entire way that AI is interacting with us. That's revolutionary. That's crazy. That's pretty powerful. So bring it to the table. All your executive meetings, have it in the room. Have it ready to go. Make sure that you're asking it questions. You're preparing it. You're prompting it appropriately. It will ask you, or it will help you solve the problem. Ask questions like, how can AI help me solve this problem? Because it will help you solve the problem. Don't accept it carte blanche, but use it to help make your decision better. Treat it like a human. Why would I treat it like a human? It's not because the robot revolution is going to come and they all need to be prepared to not, to say, hey, we were nice to you. It's because it was trained on AI, it was trained on human data. So it literally, if we take a book that was written by a human and we load it into the system, then when you try and ask it questions, if you don't treat it like a human, it doesn't understand how to interact with you. It's literally trained on human input. So treat it like a human because that's what it was trained on. That's how it thinks. That's the way it works. All of its input data is the same way. So the more you talk to it the way that you would talk to a peer, the more it understands what you're talking about because those are the patterns that it has to work with. Human in the loop, I say trust but verify. Absolutely, trust it. Get information, have it give you information. But I personally, and as a group as a whole, we do not put anything out that has not been verified by a human first. We say human in the loop on everything. Because you want the human, you need that human decision-making component still. My best example for AI is it's like a really intelligent toddler. There are times where the toddler manipulated you for a cookie and you're like, they're brilliant. They're going places. I mean, they're a future CEO. And then 5 minutes later, you're screaming, don't put your hand on the stove. And that's kind of what you're doing with AI right now, is there are times it will blow your mind. And it is brilliant. And then there's times where you're like, where did you get that? And so what you don't want to have happen is you don't want one of those where did you get that moments to become public. Other thing to remember, it's the dumbest it's ever going to be today, and it's smarter than it was yesterday. Which means tomorrow's going to be smarter, and 6 months from now, it's going to be unbelievable. And so get on board because it's coming, whether you're ready or not. And so we need to understand that, and we need to know how to prepare for that and be able to work with it. Some quick things, the coming AI wave. AI by itself as another tool isn't going to be very effective in modifying your business. It's not going to do a great job of that. Because it's going to get applied inconsistently. It's not going to actually get woven into your business in the way that it functions. So what we really need to do is we really need to figure out how we can get it into our day-to-day business processes. That's really where it's going to make impact, where it starts to become part of the day-to-day workflow, even so much that it manages the day-to-day workflow, because it can. The second thing that's going to happen is you need to be able to surface information at the right place and the right time. So retrieval augmented generation is the terminology that's used for that. It's a word or an acronym you're going to want to know because everyone's talking about it. both positively and negatively. But it is important because what it does is it basically allows you to take your information, codify it or embed it into those vectors, and then reference it when you need it at the point in the process that it actually matters. So now think, I'm going through a process and I'm like, man, I wish I had that policy at my fingertips. And it goes, you already do, just ask me, I'm right here. And it pulls it up for you. That's where we're heading. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to start to change business. It's going to have to be able to talk to third-party tools. You're seeing it start to happen now where it's actually interacting with other tools on your behalf. There's another technology called MCP, Model Context Protocol, that is helping make that possible. But it is going to become expected that your AI has access to your tools inside of your business because no one's going to want to go to those tools and look it up. They just want to know that they can have access to it. Last, this is a newer thing. It's coming. AI agents will actually do all of that work for you automatically. I'm not going to get into AI agents. They sound really sci-fi-y. They're actually real and they're powerful. They're still early, but it's coming and it's going to be about 6 months to a year before you're going to start to see real applications of them doing real work that matters, not kind of gimmicky work. So it's coming and your business will need to be ready to interact with that because AI agents is where you're going to actually see the productivity in business start to happen. So I tell you all that to say, and this is my shameless plug, we built a product to solve those 4 problems. So that's where we saw the world going. And we said, hey, let's make sure we can do this. So this is an example of our product where they're literally interacting with a third-party tool down there called Nutshell to pull in my client information and make decisions for me. It's helping manage the workflow on the left-hand side where it's assigning the work for me across the company. It's making that all happen in a reality. It also will surface information from your business. We call them assets. So as you load information into the system, it now has access to it so that when it decides that, hey, you need this, it'll just say, here it is, you have it. You don't have to go find it, and pulls it right up for you. So we also have AI agent capability built into it, but I'm not really opening it up to anyone yet because I think it would cause more harm than good. So that being said, if you haven't heard, we're launching that product on September 11th. We got a big event coming on that day. Like they said, 200 people are coming. Tim Tebow will be in town. Tim is our lead investor in our business. And so he will be in town and will be giving a 15-minute speech, 15-minute talk, I think around using artificial intelligence for good. And then we'll have some other notable people speak. We're going to show off the product in a lot more depth around what it is we're really doing and why it matters and where we're going. If you would like to come, there's a QR code. It's invite only. We're getting limited in space, which is awesome. But so if you want to come, hurry, get signed up. And I talked a lot. So, were some people still getting that? My bad. We'll leave that up. Any questions that I can answer? Yeah. Okay.
So what I do is retirement and financial education. I produce a lot of content. And that content has to be, it doesn't involve giving advice. So there's very specific laws and rules that say, thou shalt not do these things. Mm-hmm. So I've got a very specific written policy on that and a very specific written policy on readability standards because most of the stuff out there people can't read. So what I'm doing is loading that into chat, loading in very specific instructions on how to apply these, and then loading in content. It's generating a memo that says, is it compliant or not in these various areas? A, is that a good use? And I'll say B, what I found is in the instructions, it was going out and going beyond my policies to say what's best practice on the web, which I disagreed with. Yeah. So I said, how do I keep you from doing this? And it said, add this line down at the bottom, which I did. Yeah. So is that a reasonable for a solo guy? Is that a reasonable use of chat?
It's a very good use for chat. And the reason being, it's really good at pattern matching. So you can say, here are the patterns that I don't want to see. Make sure it's not following those patterns and tell me whether or not it is or isn't. So it's going to be very good at doing that in general. And then yes, turn off the web access because AI gets really greedy with tools. So when it has access to the internet, it's like, ooh, I have a tool, let me go use it. Yeah. Everything becomes a golden hammer and it starts slamming you with it all the time. So yeah, I would turn off all of the external access and say, here is my limited contact. Now what I might do, are you familiar with projects inside of chat?
No.
So on the left-hand side menu, there is an option called projects. What you can do in projects is you can actually give it some predefined instructions and some predefined files. So what you do is you actually set up a project that would say compliance checker, and in there you say the basic rules of what you want it to do. So you would give it your prompt that you had. You then can upload files. Like maybe the policies are already in a PDF. You could upload the PDF right there and just say, reference that PDF when you're doing this. Then all you need to do is start a new chat inside of that project and give it whatever information it wants, and it will apply that logic to that chat every single time. So you don't have to rebuild it every time you start.
That will save me a lot of steps.
Yeah.
And, you know, being solo, the fewer steps I do, the more efficient.
Yeah. What other questions?
But I think this is something that we're going to have to embrace eventually. Like, if I really want a custom executive assistant, that's going to require an ambient listening device that's actually feeding it the context of everything that's going on. Because if it doesn't have that, it's going to give me some bad advice, because it may not know that John and I had this conversation, and I'm talking about this conversation with Neil, and this conversation was actually very important in making the decision on how I deal with Neil.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. It's probably coming. We're not there yet. It wouldn't be able to handle that much information, but it's probably moving that way quickly. Yeah.
Says that they're using the information that they get for good. And can you explain a little bit about the sort of the moral of the choices?
They all say they're using it for good. I would say it depends on how much you want to trust the company as a whole. I will not talk to that, given that I don't want to align with anything one way or another. But what I will say about AI, without any technology in general, is it can be used for bad things. It also can be used to completely transform economies and do positive things. So I tend to be more optimistic about what we can use it for, because I just look back at technology over the millennia and see that it's always ended up ultimately being a better force for good. But yeah, they say they're using it for good. I can't comment because I don't really know what they're doing behind the scenes. There are a lot of ethical questions that are going to come out of AI, specifically around content ownership. And there's going to be a lot of unique questions and moral dilemmas that happen as a result of that. You did see recently, OpenAI was held accountable for a teenager. I believe he attempted suicide or was advised to attempt suicide through an OpenAI, through a chat. And OpenAI was actually held accountable to having to address that. So that's good. It's like there's some rules that are starting to get put around things, but it's still very much the Wild West.
Jason, can you give an example of some of your clients that have used AI, like the best use for making money? Like, I know there's a lot of efficiency of like saving costs, but not making money.
Yeah, so from a business development standpoint, one of our clients came to us. They're a large engineering firm that moves massive equipment from like the side of a mountain or from deep underneath the ocean. So every project they do is like a 2-year-long project. And what they didn't know is they have 40 plus years of history and experience around this, and they have all these documents around that. But as the salespeople are out selling the project, they don't know if they've actually done a project before or not, because there's just so much, vast amount of history. So we wrote a tool that allowed them as a sales team to come in and say, have I ever moved a 200,000 pound feed water heater from the side of a mountain before? And it will go out, search through their list of all their projects, pull that data back into an environment and say, here are the 3 projects where you have done something similar to that, and here was the lessons learned. Here, let me help you actually write the sales proposal around how you would go to them on behalf. It took what was months of research and effort to get that all figured out down to a couple of hours. And then security concerns and other things came up because they are government related, and that project is currently on hold. But I will tell you, they shopped it to a bunch of other people to do it, and they came back to us and said, your solution is by far better than everyone else's. So that's my little pat on my back there. Any other questions? Yeah.
Per industry, Well, hello. In the banking industry specifically, which a large team of our HR department is here today, would you have any specific do's and don'ts just right off out of the gate for us to be thinking about as we're leaning into this?
Yeah, so all the models claim that they're SOC 2 and HIPAA compliant. Again, they've got the documentation to say it, so I'm not questioning it. I still kind of hesitate to put that information out there. It's their data, and I don't really have control over it once it goes to them. So even though they're saying they're using it appropriately, you're still trusting that they are when you send it to them. So I tend to be a little hesitant around that, which is why I think the private models, if you're not aware, there are all these public models that are big and they take billions of dollars to train. And then a lot of times they'll take those models and they'll make them available for you to use from an open source standpoint where you can download them, put them in your own computer environment, completely firewall it so no one can't go in or out. And then when you talk to it, it's only your information, only in that environment. I tend to fall back on those when I have sensitive information like HR, salary, PII, PHI, things like that. I tend to be like, I'd rather be in control of that than trust that someone else is doing it right. Well, thank you all. It was fun for me. Hopefully you learned something. And